So, the new Baldur's Gate game is out? You gonna buy it?
Maybe. The hype for that game is hard to ignore. Is Baldur's Gate 3 really that good?
Clearly it must be. The media is going nuts about it.
Well, before I pull my credit card out, I'd like to educate myself by reading the Steam reviews.
Cool. Pull it up and let's read some reviews.
Look at that. That's quite the launch.
No kidding. Huh. Seems a lot of people just like the game just because of Larian Studios' business practices.
Perhaps that is a way to support such behavior, but that doesn't mean the game is good. Okay, you go ahead and read this one.
It's just sad. Mild spoilers ahead. By modern day standards, this is Game of the Year. Unfortunately, modern standards are so low. There is so much evidence of poor attention to details here. Shadowheart saying, "Not today, I'll find you on some other quiet night" when you offer her a date, and then coming on to you 5 seconds later when you go to bed. Numerous off-putting, poorly done, mood-killing, outright weird facial animations. Shadowheart saying she is beyond liking me, and I've completely changed her as a person after one day in my company. Completely changed how? What does she even refer to? We barely traded words. And once I saw her in pain because of her strange religious rituals. On the first glance, everything is here. The role-playing game, the narrative, the interactive world, huge amount of content. But there is no substance to it. The amount of memorable, funny, charming characters is painfully low. Most folks resemble modern-day people with modern-day problems, and modern-day attitude towards the world, each other, and you. Evil characters are just evil. The druid will kill the girl because she is evil and wants to show everyone who is in charge. Really? That's the depth of moral choices we get here? Where are the interesting stories, charming characters, grey morale, or difficult decisions? Every other time I was presented with some kind of a choice, I tried so hard to care, but I could not. Half of the time, they don't give you any context, and it's either help random stranger or ignore kill them. Half of the time, the choice is obvious unless you are a psycho.
There is so little humor here as well. Small jokes, friendly banter, nice one-liners. Where have this all gone? Even your own companion, when after certain events he asks about how do I look, you can actually say something like blank man, and I pushed this option because it was supposed to be an obvious joke to me. But no, the character then bursts with a blankety speech about how he will overcome his looks with his glorious deeds. Who wrote this? Most of the time, writing is either boring or outright dumb, with few exceptions. I expected so much more from Larian after Divinity Original Sin 2. It was a 9-10, maybe 10-10 game, even for such a picky prick like me. But here, despite all the work, I can say it's a 6-10. 7 if you're a huge for real Baldur's Gate, Dungeons & Dragons fan. It's better than average game that is seriously lacking at times, despite all the content and budget. I don't even want to talk about the role-playing game system here. It's the latest D&D, simplistic, with few character choices that actually matter, few major differences between classes. Larian tried to sprinkle it with some ideas, but it does not help much. Even on the Tactician, it's an easy game where it does not really matter that much which characters you use and which builds you play. Pick a class, max the start attribute, everything else you can pick at random, and there are so many more questionable design decisions I do not know where to start. No one would finish reading this anyway. I love these games. I love Baldur's Gate, but this is a game I will finish and forget, sadly.
That seemed like a fair review. There was some emotion there.
Yeah, negative reviews tend to have a flavor of frustration. Positive reviews can do the same. Oh, you go ahead and start this one.
If you wanted pure Baldur's Gate, this might not be it. If you wanted a Divinity sequel, this definitely isn't it. If you decided you wanted a Divinity spin-off dressed up like Baldur's Gate, well, congratulations, you found what you were looking for. I don't mean that in a negative way, but it can take some time adjusting if you were expecting a pure experience of one or the other, but it's effectively exactly what you might expect from a developer who has made so many entries into the Divinity series and then attempts to build a sequel to a franchise they originally had nothing to do with, Baldur's Gate. What's here is an attempt at recreating some of that classic 90s computer RPG feel with somewhat modernized streamlining. It doesn't go the full open world of something like the Elder Scrolls series, Skyrim, etc., But you do have a lot of freedom in your choices of how to complete the story choices, and with plenty of side quests to explore. But it is very much a hub world, warping you from one set piece to another. Combat is turn-based, while exploring outside of combat can be toggled to free-running or turn-based. Some people have complained that there is no pause, but that's only if you don't understand you can simply toggle to turn-based and remain paused on your turn for as long as you want. Toggling off turn-based to run around means the simulation of the world is moving at the same time as you. So, a wandering group of enemies could stumble into you at any time, and the game would force you into turn mode for combat anyway. The biggest praise I can give the game is that the story is well written. At least the 10 or so hours I've experienced of it so far. Exploring and combat are functional, but not groundbreaking.
Character creation has a lot of options in some areas, but limited in others. A variety of classes, a middling selection of customization options aside from color variety, and a disappointingly small number of voice options, most of which don't suit your non-human racial options. You'll probably still find something fun to play as, but it may not be exactly what you thought it would be. I expect there will be a wide range of mods to add to this someday, but that day isn't at launch. It also ignores some of the D&D rules, which further solidifies this as a more of a hybrid with Divinity. If you don't care, then you won't even notice this. But if you're a D&D purist, you'll be wondering at some of the odd changes. I'm not going to bother listing them in detail. Most people won't care, and those that do will find them easy enough on their own. I haven't had any performance issues on launch day. The game runs well enough, assuming you actually meet the listed requirements.
There's not much else to say. The game is pretty straightforward about what it wants to be. A story-rich, party-based RPG set in the universe of Dungeons & Dragons, where your choices shape a tale of fellowship and betrayal, survival and sacrifice, and the lure of absolute power, quoted from the store page. And so far, it seems to mostly deliver on this promise. I could complain about the combat being simple, or the game feeling like it's a very pretty skin over a 1990s mindset. But are those even complaints? They are very deliberate design choices. Most complaints I could make just feel petty when the main feature of the game is very well done. And just to be clear, that main feature is delivering a party-based RPG in a story-rich world. This is definitely a game you can get lost in for hours. As for me, I enjoyed the original Baldur's Gate games, and I've had some fun with Divinity games, and I'm not that picky over changing the D&D rules, so I guess I'm the target market. Beyond that, what you see on the store page is what you get. It's not hiding any microtransactions or lying about what it is.
Bottom line, if you're a fantasy RPG fan, you probably don't want to skip this.
That one was really good. I might just consider playing the game now. You got any more reviews?
Here's one with an outsider point of view. I definitely need to read this one. I'm reviewing this game from the perspective of someone who really doesn't care for RPGs and certainly not D&D. Not that there is anything wrong with the genre or D&D, I've just never been into them personally. But I wanted to give Baldur's Gate 3 a try, and so far it's been a mixed bag. To reiterate, I'm giving my perspective as someone who ordinarily doesn't care for games of this type. I wanted to step out of my comfort zone. And if you're like me and think you want to try this game out, this review is for you. Excuse me.
First, I'm really enjoying the story and all of the characters I've encountered so far. The game comes out swinging with some fantastic cutscenes that really amp up the drama and the intrigue. And when you're in the world, trying to get to the bottom of the mind flayers while navigating the various situations you come across, the stakes never feel lessened or forgotten. Most of your party mates are available almost right at the start of the game, and each of them bring their own unique personalities, opinions, quirks, and abilities that contribute to your party socially and in combat. The story and characters are really the highlight of the game for me. The foundation of the gameplay is, of course, the D&D style dice system. This is one area I was very unsure about going in. Generally, I don't like any sort of system in a game that is based on probabilities. In my time playing, however, I've found I don't actually mind the system as much as I thought I would, but I'm still going to complain about it. I despise how systems like this can make your builds and choices for your character feel pointless. I'm playing as a fighter who swings a giant axe in combat. But because the dice decided I should fail a strength check, some wimpy vampire elf is capable of pinning me on the ground. I also initially failed to pull Gale out of the portal. 2 failed strength checks back to back, right at the beginning of the game, for a character who is mostly based upon being strong. It cheapens character building, and it also encourages save scrubbing, which just isn't fun. Of course, I've had instances of getting lucky with rolls, but more often than not, in my experience, leaving almost every significant interaction with the world up to chance is just frustrating. If I spec a character into certain traits and abilities, I expect my character to be able to do those things without a fuss. I had another strength check where I had 2 dice. 2 dice. And I only needed 10 to pass. Well, I doubled rolled a 3 and my boosts weren't enough to get me up to 10, so I failed it. I'm not going to keep harping on the dice, but just know probabilities permeate every part of the game, and they can leave you feeling cheated out of certain encounters that your character is ostensibly built for.
Another point of frustration for me is just how slow the characters are when navigating the world. I hate clicking on a distant point on the terrain and then having to sit for upwards of 20 seconds in some cases for my party to get to where I need them to go. It makes exploration and navigation incredibly tedious at times. I had a situation where I went to speak to Zevlor in a room behind a gate. He gave me a quest, and I noticed I could climb up a ladder to the main world. So I do. And when I arrive at the top, a tutorial pops up telling me I can use Z to jump. I notice some rocks that are pretty close but still spaced out. Maybe this is the game trying to tell me I should jump over these rocks to get to the quest? I jump over the rocks and get to a sheer drop that I can handle with some fall damage. But none of my party members can follow me, so I reload, reacquire the quest, and then go on my way. That wasn't the way forward, despite the appearance of the landscape and the tutorial making me think it was. This is one of a few particular instances where exploring the map has been tedious. But even when I'm just navigating the map casually, I find it to be dull and irritating. I think a lot of the tedium could be alleviated if player-party movement wasn't so slow and if the controls didn't feel so sluggish. Another issue I'm having that is unrelated to the game's genre, but rather the technical side, is performance. My last play session, the one that inspired me to write this review, was ended because during a pretty significant battle in Act 1, the game just flat out crashed. And I've been experiencing pretty severe frame drops whenever I go to an area with a lot of other people or items. And while I've only had the one aforementioned crash, battles can be pretty hit or miss with how they run. I've noticed that battles tend to run pretty poorly if there's more than 6 or 7 enemies on screen. I've also had instances where character models will just stand still and not move while performing attacks. And a few instances where during a battle, the UI will just disappear, and I won't be able to end the current turn. So I just have to reload and hope I don't have to go too far back from the battle.
Overall, I've been somewhat disappointed with my time in Baldur's Gate 3. I really enjoy the characters and story, and so I will likely continue playing to experience all those story and character moments, but I know I'm going to continue to experience frustration. Again, I think I could tolerate most of my complaints with the game if the performance wasn't so bad. I'm not sure what the problem is. My drivers are all up to date, and while I don't have the newest hardware, my PC is pretty powerful and has never had this much trouble running a game before.
If you're on the fence about getting Baldur's Gate 3, or if you're like me and don't generally play or enjoy RPGs, maybe wait for a sale to pick this up. Know that you'll be thrust into a thrilling story with excellent, well-developed characters and pretty solid turn-based combat that is marred by random chance spoiling moments in the game, encouraging save scrubbing to get the outcomes you want, sluggish controls, and a lot of tedium when navigating the open world.
I gotta say, I've been convinced to wait for a sale to buy this game. What's your final verdict?
I'm going to wait for the game to go on sale. I don't normally play these type of games, but if the story and characters are solid, that will pique my interest enough. I know we only read 3 reviews, but honestly, that is the gist of what people are saying.
Cool.